Oh, fuck, I'm gonna be having a lot more busy time with videos now because I just started. Or actually, I created a few days ago. I had about 3 days ago. I created a Rumble account. It was like in a couple of days after I got my new phone. Um, um, and today I posted my first two videos, like my first like two videos on my Rumble account. So so on top of YouTube, you could check me out on Rumble. Um, and Rumble is an alternative to YouTube. So if you're not getting like views and subscribers on YouTube, Rumble is an alternative that you could use. So I downloaded that. And like I said, I posted my two videos today. Let's see how that takes off. Um, and then I also did a podcast episode earlier. So I got my podcast already sent out to like Facebook and Twitter and among a few other people. Um, but let's get to the main part of what I want to talk about. Um, basically, we're going to talk about the Republicans and basically what they've done wrong for years. But actually, it says what have the Republicans wrought? And it says the orange fuck weasel's insanity finally ripped the party apart. Well, actually, the party was already ripped apart before he came along. Anyway, over the past few years, both the media and Democratic officials have often reported that certain Republicans say on background or in private that they really can't stand pumpkin tits. Well, nobody really can anyway. Veteran reporter Carl Bernstein even gave some names a few days ago, and some people in the media and political classes would apparently prefer that the public see the Republican establishment as terrified of pumpkin tits' base rather as than the cynics that they are, that they're eagerly taking advantage of pumpkin tits' chaos to advance their agenda. The orange fuckweasel's post-election flights of lunacy provide an excellent case in point. While the mainstream Republicans covertly whisper in Joe Biden's ear that they know he won the election and assure him that they find um, the orange fuckweasels twaddle about the election being about the rigged votes and what have you terribly uncaused. They remain quiet in public, basically because they want to let Pumpkin Tits have his tantrum and run out the clock. At which point we will pretend that all this unpleasantness never happened. This is, of course, nuts. President-elect Biden and every other Democrat who goes before the cameras to reassure Americans that the Republicans understand that Pumpkin Tits is off his rocker and that as soon as he's gone, we will be back to normal. Basically, we'll get back to normal, or enabling them to continue the sabotage of our democracy. Democrats have no obligation to cover for Pumpkin Tits' accomplices, and they need to stop doing it. Republicans have been wringing their hands about voter fraud for years, despite no evidence to support such claims, in order to make voting much more difficult, which is, of course, their ultimate goal. It's not as if the orange fuck weasel came up with all this on his own. It's been a Republican staple for decades. He's just turned the dial up to 11, as he does with everything. It's not hard to imagine that the more flamboyant Republicans who are egging Pumpkin Tits on, as well as the quiet ones who are content to let this play out, they see an opportunity to leverage Pumpkin Tits' following to enact some truly egregious vote suppression tactics in swing states. They know, they know, they know they're not going their way. With 50 million angry Pumpkin Tits voters out there who at least claim to be convinced that the entire system is corrupt, who knows what they may be able to accomplish on their own. Republicans are counting on Pumpkin Tits fading away. Who are counting on Pumpkin Tits fading away quickly, while they continue to take advantage of the system that he has broken. It's a risky play. The conspiracy theories have become so Byzantine and surreal that it won't be easy to appease the mob, not even with the extreme measures like outlawing early voting or voting by mail. The Orange Fuck Weasel's followers are being whipped into a frenzy, and it's starting to blow back on the Republicans. Earlier this week, Pumpkin Tits stood behind the presidential podium in the diplomatic reception room of the White House and delivered what he called the most important speech he'll ever give, and it wasn't really that important. You might have assumed a speech described in those terms would have been about the massive death toll the country is currently experiencing from the pandemic, but no. As the Washington Post's Philip Rucker put it, it was a prepared teleprompter speech in which Pumpkin Tits tried to leverage the power of despondency to subvert the vote and overturn the election results. Oddly, perhaps, the Orange Fuck Weasel didn't invite the press or an audience of any kind. The number of cuts suggested the speech was delivered in several takes and then edited altogether. Instead, the speech was streamed live on Facebook and later broadcasted in full on the right-wing cable networks. This was by design, obviously in order to inject this diatribe directly into the pumpkin tits on bloodstream, unadulterated by any commentary or fact checks to my ears and those of anyone who is living in reality. It was completely insane, and to his followers, it was a formal presidential address. Senate Majority Leader Moscow Mitch once said, "The single most important thing we want to achieve is for President Barack Obama to be a one-term president. I'm sure he would dedicate himself to the same task with respect to Joe Biden's incoming administration. If Moscow Mitch can't hold on to power, I'm sure he wishes Pumpkin Tits would shut his trap about the supposedly rigged votes in Georgia, but there's just no way to keep him quiet about this. And the longer Orange Fuckweezer keeps this up, the more it's twisting the Republican Party in knots. And every day he's tweeting something like this, even though the tweet was disputed." Basically, it says, "Wow, blockbuster testimony taking place right now in Georgia. Ballot stuffing by Democrats when Republicans were forced to leave the large counting room, and plenty more coming, but this alone leads to an easy win of the state, and really it doesn't." And basically, the tweet was flagged because election fraud has been disputed, and he keeps going on about it. Also, this other one, people in Georgia got caught cold, bringing in massive numbers of ballots and putting them in voting machines. Great job, Brian Kemp at Georgia. And that tweet was also flagged because there was no proof. The two screwball pro 45 nut-licking lawyers filing incompetent lawsuits on his behalf all over the country, Lynn Wood and Sidney Powell, as well as the squatter's personal lawyer Rudy Kaludi, is also filing incompetent lawsuits all over the country, and they're holding Klan rallies and testifying in various venues to make ridiculous demands. Powell and Wood held a Klan rally on Wednesday in which they excoriated Georgia Governor Brian Kemp for failing to call a special session of the state legislature to overturn the election results, inspiring lack-of chants from the crowd. And they exhorted voters not to vote for the Republican incumbents Kelly Loeffler and David Perdue in the Georgia Senate runoffs unless those two get with the program. Kaludi was in Atlanta on Thursday, making his own plea for state legislators to overturn the election and select their own electors. His evidence had already been investigated, and his understanding of Georgia law was incorrect, of course. Republicans are reportedly very nervous about Pumpkin Tits' planned super spreader Klan rally in Georgia on Saturday, which they already had anyway, because he's likely to dwell on the rigged election instead of focusing on getting out the vote for Loeffler and Perdue. And it was a huge surprise if Pumpkin Tits doesn't just let this freak flag fly. It was his first Klan rally since the election loss, and he's hardly been on TV at all since. He's dying for an audience, and it's the air he breathes. So it's left to others to fight this and stop the Still movement. A fake Breitbart report exposed Linwood as someone who voted for Democrats in the past, and Newt Gingrich, who's been fanning the conspiracy flames like crazy, calling the Georgia election a left-wing power grab financed by people like George Soros, which no proof. Abruptly, it reversed course and accused Powell and Wood of being totally destructive. Yeah, like Trump is. Said Senator Ted Cruz of Texas jumped in, calling Wood a clown who was trying to mislead voters. Even the Orange Fuckweezer war room got in on the act. But Wood hasn't backed down, telling the Daily Beast. The Pumpkin Tits campaign needs to demand that Governor Brian Kemp calls a special session of the Georgia legislature. Loeffler and Perdue should make that same demand. The general election was a fraud. After all, the legislature fixes the voting process, then they get out and vote. Seems like good common sense to me, right? Look who sounds like he's on the same page. Also, Pumpkin Tits here did another tweet. The Republican governor of Georgia, Brian Kemp, and the Secretary of State must immediately allow a signature verification match in the presidential election if that happens very quickly and easily win the state. And importantly, it paves the way for a big David and Kelly win. And here we are. And it says, here we are. We have Michelle Malkin of the Newsmax, a fake news site, basically a cringe-worthy network whose ratings are going through the roof as the maggot crowd immigrates from the deep state propagandists of faux news. And what a tangled web we have and weave. It appears that the cult has a life of its own now and in the process of disengaging from the Republican mothership. It's basically whether this will affect the Georgia runoff remains to be seen, but it's pretty clear that this rigged election gambit may have some far-reaching effects that the Republican establishment did not anticipate when they sat back and smugly let pumpkin tits run wild with his conspiracy theories. But if you like the video, give the video a like and subscribe to my channel, Random Mike, and also hit the notification bell so that you'll be notified when a new video comes out, and thanks for listening.